Welcome to St Martin's Church in Canterbury, and we're going to take you around the churchyard now to show you some of the war graves that are found there. The war graves information that we'll be telling you about was provided by the Commonwealth War Graves and our own local historian Tricia Baxter. So we hope you find out something of those who are buried here, having served in one or other of the World Wars, and in one case having served in both. The first grave we're going to show you is that of Lieutenant Vernon James Austin of the Royal Field Artillery. He was born on the 21st of November 1893 at Birmingham, died on the 26th of January 1915, aged 21, at La Bassée in France. He was killed in action by a sniper and his body repatriated. At that time, bodies were able to be repatriated if families wished, and so the Austin family took advantage of this. And at this time as well, graves were also in different forms. Later in the war and in the famous scenes that we see in battlefields, cemeteries, we recognise the familiar form of the Commonwealth War Grave. Here we have one which was commissioned by the family and which they were allowed to do as a reminder of a loved one from their own family who had given his life. Vernon was the son of Herbert First Baron Austin, founder of the Austin Motor Company, and Helen Austin, born in Australia. Family lived at Lickey Grange in Bromsgrove in Worcestershire. His family's monument is on the west wall inside the church, and over his grave is a headstone from the employees of the Austin Motor Company with whom he had worked. He was a probationer scholar of the King's School from 1907 to 1909 and joined the army in 1912. And so that's the first of the graves, a reminder that those who died often came from well-known families and that grief was shared by high and low, famous and not so famous, around the country and around the world. The second grave we're going to show you is that of Lieutenant Eric Coppins Byng. He was in the 2nd, 3rd Home Counties Cinque Ports Brigade of the Royal Field Artillery. He was born on the 6th of October 1896 in Canterbury and died on the 15th of August 1915, aged 18, on active service in a motorcycle accident at Chipstead near Sevenoaks. He was the only son of Charles and Emily Louisa Byng of the old rectory, St George's Street, Canterbury. Eric's family owned Byng's Pharmaceutical Chemists in St George's Street and Byng's soda water and lemonade manufacturers in Monastery Street, Canterbury, and there are a number of other graves to the Byng family and Byng lemonades here in the churchyard. Eric was a day boy of the King's School from 1905 to 1914, and it's a reminder as we look at his grave that he died aged just over 18 years old. By contrast, our next memorial is one which is in the familiar Commonwealth War Graves style, and it commemorates Private John Howland Chapman, and his name appears on the St Paul's Memorial. He served in the Buffs East Kent Regiment, saw service in the Zulu War from 1877 to 1879 and later transferred to the Labour Corps. He was born in 1856 at Brook near Ashford and baptised in St Mary's at Brook on the 13th of April 1856. He died on the 2nd of November 1917, still on active service, aged 61 at Canterbury from nephritis, inflammation of the kidney. He was married to Mary Ann Harriet Chapman, and they lived at 2A St Martin's Hill, Canterbury. And the inscription that Mrs Chapman placed there was "Sleep on, beloved." And so we see that those who died often were quite advanced in years and had a lot of service in the forces and were very much local people. Here in St Martin's Hill, it rests very close to where he had lived. Our next grave is in memory of Lieutenant Charles Leonard Parlett Hemming of the 2nd Battalion, the Prince of Wales Leinster Regiment, the Royal Canadians. He was born on the 4th of April 1897 in Bromley in Kent and died on the 12th of February 1917, aged 19, dying at Netley in Hampshire in the hospital there for those being brought back from France. He died from pneumonia following gunshot wounds to the shoulder received at Loos in France on the 10th of January 1917. He was the son of Francis Charles and Edith Eleanor Hemming of Lane End, Frensham, Farnham in Surrey, and like a number of others buried close by, he was educated at King's School, Canterbury from 1906 to 1914, and one who undoubtedly would have gone fairly quickly from his studies to serving in the forces. Our next memorial again is for someone who's commemorated on the St Paul's Memorial. This is for 2nd Lieutenant Leslie Thomas Hogben of the 43rd Training Squadron of the Royal Flying Corps. He was born in March 1899 in Canterbury, and he died on the 23rd of October 1917, aged 18, at Colehurst, Shropshire, near RAF Turnhill. He was killed in a mid-air collision whilst flying a Newport 20 A6741. Son of Walter James and Charlotte Hogben of 19 Albert Road, Canterbury. He's buried with his father Walter, 1869 to 1919. And the inscription placed on this Commonwealth war grave is, "With Christ, which is far better, his life to England, his soul to God." And so, as we look at this particular memorial, we remember the beginnings of the Royal Flying Corps, which became the Royal Air Force, and again we remember that those commemorated here were people from the local area. Our next memorial that we're looking at is for Lieutenant Acting Captain Geoffrey Dalier McClear, MC, and he served in the 2nd Battalion of the 39th Garwell Rifles. He was born on the 17th of October 1887 in Canterbury, and he died on the 29th of January 1919, aged 31, in the London General Hospital in Wandsworth. He was invalided home from Mesopotamia and died from dysentery. Son of the late Reverend Canon G.F. McClear, Warden of St Augustine's Missionary College, now the site of the King's School down by Lady Wooton's Green, and his mother was Eva McClear. He was educated between 1900 and 1906 at the King's School in Canterbury. He was a member of the India Educational Service, working in Calcutta until 1912 as Inspector of Government Colleges and Schools. And a reminder again that those who served in the war were often people who had good jobs in civilian times and were people who gave up those jobs in order to volunteer to fight and to give their lives. And our next memorial is for Corporal Alfred William Shever. Again, Alfred is on the St Paul's Memorial. He served in the 52nd Motor Transport Company of the Army Service Corps. And he was in the Buffs, and he was a motor driver from 1909. He was born in 1890 in Canterbury, and he died on the 16th of November 1918, aged 28, in Canterbury. The cause of his death is not stated, but we presume that he had been wounded and was invalided back and died here just after the end of the war. So as everyone was celebrating the armistice, so those caught up in the conflicts of the First World War were continuing to die. He was the son of William Reader Shever and Fanny Shever, and they lived at number 5 St Martin's Hill in Canterbury. So once again, a local person. The next grave is a World War II grave. It's for Brigadier Frederick Adrian Joseph Evan Marshall, DSO, MBE, MC. He served in World War I as an officer in the Buffs, served in World War II in the 4th Battalion of the Buffs, Royal East Kent Regiment, on the Command and Staff Wing from 1939 to 1941, and was the Cyprus Garrison Commander from 1943 to 1945. He was born on the 7th of January 1895 in Dulwich, and he died on the 12th of October 1947, aged 52, so just after the end of the Second World War. He was the husband of Annie Jessie Ann Marshall of Paddington, who died on the 29th of October 1966 and is buried with him. And he was the son of Frederick and Mary Marshall. So here we have someone who served in both World Wars, survived both World Wars, but died at the age of only 52. Our next grave is that of Gunner William Henry Roberts of the 143rd, the Kent Yeomanry, Field Regiment of the Royal Artillery. He was born in 1901, baptised on the 1st of December 1901 in St Gregory's here in Canterbury, and he died on the 20th of December 1942, aged 41. He was the husband of Hilda Jessie Roberts, son of William Henry and Elizabeth Ann Roberts of Canterbury. And the inscription on his grave is, "Life's work well done, life's race well run, life's crown well won, now cometh rest." And as we can see on his grave, there is the emblem of the Buffs, the Horse of Kent, Invicta, Unconquered, being its motto. Our next grave is to Private John Sandy of the 30th Battalion of the Queen's Royal Regiment, West Surrey. He was born in 1918 in Faversham, died on the 18th of July 1942 in Canterbury, aged 24. He was the husband of Elsie Sandy of Canterbury. And next we look at Officer Cadet David Michael Weems, formerly Gunner of the Royal Artillery. He was born in 1919, died on the 22nd of December 1939, aged 20. He was cremated and his ashes buried here in St Martin's. He was the son of Lieutenant Colonel David Gillespie Weems, formerly of the Royal Scots, and Florence Weems of Hythe. His parents are buried not too far away, and he was an old Haileyburyan. And so that gives you a guided tour of the memorials here in our churchyard. As we found as we went round, many of them were people who had died here in Kent, having served in this country or being brought back following their service. And as I said at the beginning, in future, after 1915, all bodies were left where they had fallen. And that is why when you travel around France and travel around other parts of the world, you will see many large cemeteries and some much smaller ones, including some of 3 or 4 graves where a plane may have crashed or where soldiers were killed in a particular action away from battle. And so, as we come to the end of our tour, we take a moment to remember all those who gave their lives in 2 world wars, all those who have died in subsequent conflicts, and all those who have been injured or whose lives have been changed by the events of the First and Second World War. And we remember the family and friends of those who often died at a young age and are commemorated here, and those who will be watching us today and touring the churchyard with us, for whom this will bring back memories or reminders of someone who gave their life in our 2 world wars.